So the Switch 2 is finally out, and it's been awesome to finally be able to play it, but there's been a lot of controversy around this console's launch. So this made me want to compare this launch with other major console launches that came before it. So in this video, I'll be going through the consoles in chronological order of when they launched, and I won't be reviewing any of these consoles here because I was too young when they came out, and I don't really know enough about these to talk about them in this video. So first, let's talk about the PlayStation 1. At the time, a 3D console was a big deal. It was a change of generation, and it meant going from 2D games to 3D games, and the N64 was not out yet. To me, the games that were available on day one were just okay, so I'll rank this one as a B. And remember, this is just a review of the actual launch, so it's more about the experience of buying this console on day one specifically. Next, we have the N64, and this is a weird one. It launched with only 2 games, which is absolutely crazy, and of course this hurts the console's launch as a whole, but one of these 2 games was Mario 64, which was an absolute must-play, and people still talk about this game to this day. So if you did buy this console on day one, this game kind of made the purchase worth it, just by itself. So to me, because Mario 64 was such a big deal, this launch was better than the PlayStation 1 launch, but over the life of both of these consoles, the PlayStation 1 ended up being way more popular and selling way more units. Next, we have the Dreamcast. To me, the Dreamcast had a very solid launch lineup. It had Sonic Adventure, which was a very solid single-player game, but then you also had amazing multiplayer games like Soul Calibur, Power Stone, House of the Dead. So if you bought this console on day one, you had a lot to do, a lot of variety. And back then, the graphical jump from one console to the next was pretty significant. If you had a PS1 or an N64, and then you looked at Dreamcast graphics, the difference was massive. And this came out 1 year before the PS2, so it was the only console with this kind of graphics for a little while. So to me, this launch was an A. It was a great console to buy on day one. Sadly, over time, this console didn't do so well, and Sega stopped making game consoles. Again, having a good launch doesn't mean that the console will do crazy well, but it was a good one to get on day one. Next, we have the PS2. This console had a lot of hype around it after the success of the PlayStation 1, and it launched with a very impressive lineup of games. There were a ton of game genres available on day one. However, to me, none of them is an absolute must-play, but it was still a great amount of choices for day one. And on top of that, this console also had backwards compatibility, and at that time, no other consoles did that. So it was a big deal because PS1 had a ton of classics. So really, this launch was pretty good. I'm putting it here now, but honestly, I feel like it could have been rated as an A as well. It could really be either way. Next, we have the GameCube, which to me is a rather weak launch, especially because by the time the GameCube came out, the PS2 already had some amazing games available. The GameCube didn't have the best lineup on day one. Like, if you were a huge Nintendo fan, maybe you were super excited to play Luigi's Mansion, but for the average gamer, these games were kind of forgettable. In the long run, GameCube ended up being one of my favorite consoles, but I didn't feel this console was appealing on day one. Now we have the original Xbox. It was the first time Microsoft was entering the console race, so everyone was kind of curious about it. In terms of raw power, it was stronger than the PS2, and it cost the same price at launch. And it had an amazing lineup of games, Halo being an exclusive that everyone really wanted to play, so it made a huge difference if you had an Xbox or not. And they also had a great racing game, great fighting game available at launch, so great variety all around. To me, it was kind of as good as a console launch could be, especially considering that it was the first console from Microsoft. And now for the next generation, we have the Xbox 360, which started the next generation quite early, so that was a big advantage for them. The launch lineup was just okay, although it had decent variety at least, and backward compatibility, but really, coming out about a year before the competition gave them a big boost. I think this is a good B. It could have been an A if this console launched with a stronger exclusive. If it launched with another Halo, it would have been a different story. So yeah, that's where it lands. Now the PS3. To me, this is the worst PlayStation launch ever. The price of this console was absolutely ridiculous. If you wanted the model with the biggest memory, you had to pay 600 USD, which in today's money translates to roughly $950, almost $1,000. And that's before a game, right? So, you know, people are freaking out about the Switch 2 price these days, but that was wild. And it really felt felt like PlayStation had gotten complacent, and you know, their big title was Resistance Fall of Man, which I never played it myself, and I don't see a lot of people talking about it today, so I don't know that it had a strong impact on gaming history. So I'm gonna put it here. In the end, PS3 did pretty well by the end of the console life. It kind of caught up with Xbox 360, but it took them a lot of effort to recover from this launch. Next up, we have the Wii, which was a very weird and unique console launch. I think this was a very strong launch because we were in a time where most consoles just felt like, okay, it's just stronger every time and that's it. The Wii was very mysterious. Like before the launch, people were calling it the Nintendo Revolution. Rumors were saying that it was going to change gaming forever. And when it was revealed that it's like, you know, this motion control thing, not everyone was hyped about it, but it at least still felt new and fresh. And it launched with a brand new Zelda game, which was a huge move. And on top of that, this console also came with a free game, which was Wii Sports. Even people that didn't like video games had a good time with Wii Sport. It was also cheaper than the competition. So this launch was just actually flawless. It was awesome at the time. Next, we have the Wii U. This was probably Nintendo's worst launch. When we look at the consoles from this list, their flagship title was Super Mario Bros. U, but we just had a 2D Mario game not that long before on the Wii, so it didn't feel that fresh anymore. And yeah, this console was a bit weird. I think the gimmick of the screen was less well received than the motion control. Around this time, people were kind of over the Wii and its gimmick. So the fact that the Wii was coming out with yet another gimmick, this time with their screen, people were not really excited about it. One thing I remember too is that it looked like the controller was going to be like a portable console, but it actually wasn't. You needed to stay close to the console in order to play it. And that felt like a huge letdown to people. So yeah, too bad. Wii U had a bad launch and ended up having a pretty terrible life as a whole. Next, we had the PS4, which had a pretty decent launch. Actually, I remember finding it a bit funny at the time because Sony wasn't doing anything special with the PS4, but the Xbox One had such a bad reputation that Sony looked like the good guys in comparison. Again, like a lot of PlayStation launches, I think this one lacks a really good exclusive at launch. They had Knack and Killzone Shadowfall. Personally, when I look around, I don't see anyone talking about those titles today. It was just okay. Now the Xbox One, this one is kind of crazy. If you look above, the first Xbox and 360 are well rated, but this one kind of tanked the Xbox brand. This console was kind of hated before even coming out because it had really horrible anti-customer practices. So before the console came out, the plan was for it to be always online, meaning that even if you played a single player game, it wouldn't even boot if you didn't have an internet connection. There was going to have a digital rights management thing going on, which would have made it hard to resell your games or lend them to a friend. And they were also pushing really hard for this Kinect accessory. That thing would have filmed you and recorded you at all times in your living room. And it was going to be needed to even boot the console. So everyone complained and Microsoft kind of backtracked on a lot of these ideas. So technically, they were not part of the actual launch of the console. All of these things were reverted, but to me the damage was done. It just kind of removed a lot of goodwill from people to buy this console. And on top of all that, the Xbox One had no backward compatibility at launch. And to me that's kind of crazy because by that time, all the other consoles were doing it. It was the standard. So it really felt like a step back for gamers. With all of those things going on, everyone was mad at the Xbox One. And if you look at the launch titles, they had Forza, which is always nice, but that couldn't save the console launch, basically. In the end, Xbox tried pretty hard to right their wrongs. Kinect ended up not being needed. Backward compatibility was added over time. They've been working hard trying to regain their reputation, but the vibe was just pretty terrible on launch day for this one. Next up, we have the Switch, and that was yet another amazing launch. Similar to the Wii, the Switch launched with a brand new Zelda game, but this time I think the hype was even bigger because Breath of the Wild was a big change to the regular Zelda formula. It was a huge deal when it came out, and people are still talking about this game to this day. So it felt quite amazing to play this on day one if you bought a Switch. So already having a very strong exclusive is super powerful, but this console also had the gimmick of being the first home console that's also portable. So that was very interesting as well. Even if you wanted to just play the console on your TV, the fact that you can bring it with you on a trip or something like that is very nice. The console was well priced, everything was going well for it. So honestly, this was one of those kind of perfect console launch. It was great to get on day one, and this console did well throughout its whole life. Next, we have the Xbox Series X and Series S. You know, it's just an okay launch, I would say. They're still trying to recover from the bad reputation of the Xbox One. What's interesting is this console launched with not a single exclusive, which is kind of weird to me. Normally, when you buy a new console, you kind of want at least one game to really justify your purchase. So yeah, it had like, you know, decent launch titles via multi-platforms, but you could just buy a PS5 if you want to play those as well. This console launched 2 days before the PS5, so it felt like just waiting for the PS5 was the better move here. So yeah, I would give it a C. It didn't have a ton going for it on launch day. Next, we have the PS5, which I think was a very solid launch. I love that it came with Astro Bot. Launching the console with a free game is always cool. I liked when the Wii did that, and Astro Bot, it was a nice little game. Demon's Soul and Spider-Man were two pretty good exclusive available at launch. So I think this is an A. The only thing that was needed to me to really like bring it to S tier would be one of the exclusives being really like genre defining or something. These consoles had Zelda launch titles and the Xbox had Halo. To me, as good as Demon's Souls and Spider-Man were, they were not huge game changers, and people are not necessarily talking about these games as much nowadays. So yeah, this is my list so far. And now let's talk about the Switch 2. So Switch 2 is the successor of Switch 1. So it's the same concept, but much more powerful. The biggest controversy is definitely around the price of games, and specifically for Mario Kart World, which is $80, which is quite expensive. It has a very strong exclusive with Mario Kart World. I also love that this console can play pretty much all the Switch 1 games, and a lot of them run better, and it seems like all of them just load faster. So for me, I'm debating between B or A. I'm gonna put it in A. That's how I feel about it, but you know, I could see this being more of a B for some people. Honestly, I feel like the people freaking out about this console online are exaggerating a little bit. I think we live in an era where people like to freak out about anything remotely successful online. To me, when people freak out about the price of this console or its games, I get it, but I've seen so much worse with the PS3. And when people talk about all the controversies around the Switch 2, I feel like it's nothing compared to the controversies that Xbox One had. Alright, that's it for today's video. Let me know what you think and how you would rate these console launches differently. And until then, have a great day and see you next time.